Justin Kemp takes his pregnant wife, Ellie Cruson, to the nursery they've prepared for their future daughter. After that, the couple joins their guests to celebrate the upcoming arrival of their baby. And later in the evening, they discuss an upcoming court case. Justin has been called for jury duty, but he's thinking of a way to avoid it so he can spend more time with his wife. The next morning, upon arriving at the courthouse, Justin notices a prosecutor named Faith dropping her phone. She is the lead attorney in the case against James Sight. For Faith, this high-profile trial is a significant stepping stone toward becoming a district attorney. Justin and other citizens may be selected as jurors for this case if they pass the selection process. Before the jury selection begins, Faith speaks with Eric, the defense attorney representing the accused. Confident in her case, Faith suggests wrapping things up quickly. James pleads guilty, receives around 20 years instead of life, considering his prior offenses. However, Eric insists that his client is innocent. The selection process begins with the judge asking potential jurors about any personal reasons that might prevent them from objectively evaluating the arguments from both sides. Justin openly admits that he would prefer to avoid serving so he could spend time with his pregnant wife, but the judge doesn't consider this a valid reason for dismissal. The attorneys then delve into the candidates' backgrounds to filter out those they find unsuitable. Particular attention is paid to marital status and any history of physical altercations. As a result of the selection process, Justin is assigned juror number 2 and becomes part of the panel that will ultimately decide the defendant's guilt or innocence. In the evening, while Justin recounts his day to his wife, the prosecutor speaks at a bar, addressing voters. Later, she and Eric, who disapproves of her shift toward politics, share a drink and reminisce about their mutual professors from university. The following day, the attorneys present the details of the case to the jury. A year ago, on October 25th, the defendant and his girlfriend Kendall went to Rowdy's Refuge, a bar located off Old Quarry Road. They both drank too much and ended up arguing in front of other patrons. Kendall left on foot in the rain that night, while James followed her. According to the prosecutor, he caught up with her and killed her. However, the defense claims he went home to sober up and discuss everything the next morning. Regardless of the accounts, Kendall's bloodied body was found the next morning under a bridge, lying on the rocks. As the case details are presented, Justin recalls that on that very night, at that very bar, he had bought a drink before heading home. While driving near the bridge, he got distracted by his phone and hit something in the dark. Stepping out to inspect, he noticed damage to his car, but saw no body. Spotting a "Caution Animal" sign on the road, Justin assumed he had hit a deer that limped away into the night and drove home, reassured. Realizing now that he likely hit something or someone else that night, Justin rushes to the restroom during a break and vomits. Marcus, another juror, finds him there and asks if he's feeling okay. Justin lies, claiming the nausea is due to the crime scene photos. In the evening, Justin attends an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. His sponsor, Larry, notices that something is troubling him, but Justin isn't ready to share his secret. Later, Justin heads to his office, where he works as a journalist, to search online for information about the penalties for a fatal hit-and-run accident. Before he can read much, a janitor arrives, forcing him to leave. The next hearing focuses on witness testimonies. A bar patron recounts seeing the victim and the defendant arguing, a story corroborated by the bartender. A hiker describes how he discovered the body during his trek. The medical examiner testifies that the cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head, which was clearly inflicted violently. The defense attorney suggests that the victim, walking in the rain on high heels, could have fallen and accidentally killed herself, but the doctor finds this scenario highly unlikely. The last to testify is a local elderly man who lives on Old Quarry Road. He says that around midnight, he looked out the window and saw a man on the bridge who glanced around before driving away. When asked if he recognizes the person among the present jurors, the old man scans the room. Justin wisely bends down to pick up a dropped pen, and the witness points directly at James. After the session, Justin seeks advice from Larry, who is not only a former alcoholic but also a practicing lawyer. Larry charges him a symbolic fee to legally formalize the agreement between attorney and client. Justin then opens up and tells him everything, laying out the truth of the situation. Considering his past issues with driving under the influence and the fact that although he was sober at the time of the incident, he had bought alcohol at the bar, even though he didn't drink it, Justin knows that even a full confession won't save him from the full extent of the law and a lengthy sentence, potentially even life in prison. At the next hearing, the defendant himself takes the stand. He reiterates the defense's version of events, adding that he loved Kendall and would never have hurt her, even though she often drunkenly provoked him, skillfully begging for a sobering slap. James admits he made mistakes in the past, but that he has turned his life around and changed. Finally, the defense attorney shows a video recorded by the victim on that fateful night. In the video, the couple appears happy, and there's no sign of any serious conflict between them. The prosecutor counters with a single argument: a loved one shouldn't be allowed to wander drunkenly in the rain at night. Both sides then present their closing statements to the jury, subtly suggesting that they should reach a completely opposite verdict. During the deliberations, Dennis volunteers to be the jury foreperson, citing her extensive experience, as this is her third time serving as a juror. Dennis suggests taking a vote to determine everyone's opinion. If they are ready to reach a unanimous decision, there's no need to prolong the process. Nearly all of the 12 jurors agree that the defendant is guilty. The final deciding word falls to Justin, who knows this isn't the case. He insists that they need to discuss the situation thoroughly, as they are determining someone's fate. Reluctantly acknowledging his point, the jurors begin deliberations. The first topic of discussion is whether the elderly witness could have been mistaken in identifying someone on the road during a rainy night. The idea is supported by Harold, a former police officer, possibly even a Gotham City commissioner. From his experience, he suggests that there may have been confirmation bias at play. The cops likely picked the first obvious suspect, showed him to the old man, and he agreed that he had seen the same person. Other possibilities were simply not considered. Next, a theory is raised that the girl might not have been killed with a blunt object, but rather struck by a car and left to die. Surprise, Justin spills his coffee while the others continue discussing the possibilities. The jurors ask Harold how he would have conducted the investigation, but the retired detective doesn't get a chance to answer as the workday ends. After the session, Justin follows Harold. The former cop heads to the bridge where the victim's body was found to conduct his own inspection. There, he spots the car of a fellow juror, but is forced to return home after receiving a call from his wife. Crouching down, Justin hopes he hasn't been noticed. At home, he discusses with his wife the possibility of selling their car. The green Toyota 4Runner, though, is to be sold without revealing the fact that the body had been repaired. On Monday, the jurors return to the courthouse. Harold pulls Justin aside to talk. Over the weekend, the former detective conducted his own investigation using old contacts and tracked down all the cars that had been repaired after accidents on or after October 25th of the previous year. After eliminating those incidents that had been recorded in police reports, he found several cars involved in accidents that had gone unnoticed by the authorities. Among them is Justin's own Toyota, the one he used to follow Harold. The old man asks Justin to assist with the investigation, suggesting he question the owners of half the cars to meet the deadline. Realizing that the investigation will expose himself, Justin drops the documents in front of the bailiff. Thus, he shows that the rule of the juror not to conduct his own investigation, but to limit himself only to the official materials of the case, has been violated. The guilty individuals are led before the judge, who, after reviewing the circumstances, removes Harold from his duties as a juror. Justin, being the least involved, remains in the jury. As he leaves, the former detective talks to Prosecutor Faith, hinting that she's doing a poor job and might convict an innocent person just to close the case. His words leave an impression on her. In her free time, she checks the list Harold gave her. Meanwhile, another juror asks Justin why the old man was removed. Justin briefly explains that Harold had been working on a theory that the victim had been accidentally struck by a random driver. One of the jurors, a medical student, analyzes the autopsy data, which seems consistent with an impact from an SUV. The juror who replaces Harold, a fan of detective shows, observes that the defendant is the perfect suspect. However, she points out that such individuals are rarely the actual culprits. While analyzing the bridge's location, the jurors conclude that someone could have taken a detour and mistakenly thought they had hit a deer in the night. After this, Justin says that with such thoughts, they cannot be sure that James was the one who killed his girlfriend, so he suggests a revote. The votes are evenly split, but is still not enough. The verdict must be unanimous. This leads to another division of opinions. Marcus warns that he is not going to change his decision, believing the defendant is guilty. He has a distinctive tattoo of one of the local drug-dealing gangs on his neck. Marcus is well aware of this, as his younger brother was part of such a gang and died as a teenager. Justin tries to convince him that people can change, sharing his own story of being an alcoholic. He tells how, after narrowly escaping death in a car accident, he turned his life around with the help of his mentor, Ellie, who later became his wife. However, Marcus is not convinced that the story of an alcoholic applies ties to a street-level drug dealer. Meanwhile, the prosecutor visits the car owners listed by Harold to clarify the circumstances that led them to need bodywork repairs. As she eliminates one suspect after another, she eventually visits the elderly witness. From their conversation, she realizes that the man was simply pleased to be noticed and wanted to feel useful. So, when the cops told him they had caught the murderer, he eagerly confirmed that he had seen him on the bridge. Unable to reach a unanimous verdict, the jurors asked the judge to arrange a field trip to the crime scene to better understand the situation. Although it's against the rules, the authorities accommodate the request. Faith visits the pregnant Ellie, unaware that she is Justin's wife, as she kept her maiden name after marriage. After speaking with her and confirming that her husband hit a deer in a different area, the lawyer leaves, not noticing the face of a suspicious juror in a photo behind Ellie. Meanwhile, Justin meets with Larry again. The lawyer warns him that he won't be safe until the case is closed. The stakes are too high. If a verdict isn't reached now, the investigation could continue, and they may eventually turn their attention to Justin. At home, Justin inspects his car when Ellie enters the garage. His wife asks whom and where he hit. Justin doesn't confess, but doesn't deny it either, making her understand everything. What worries Ellie the most is that he was at the bar and might have had a drink. Justin denies drinking, though he did have those thoughts. Not long before, Ellie had a miscarriage with twins, and they both struggled deeply with the loss of their unborn children. Tormented by doubts, Faith asks Eric to arrange a meeting with the defendant in prison to personally question his innocence. He swears he didn't kill Kendall, but this conversation cannot be included in the case, even if the prosecutor wanted to. The jury is taken on a tour. First, they visit the Rowdy's Shelter Bar, where Justin recalls sitting that fateful evening contemplating drowning his sorrows in a drink, but ultimately resisting falling into the blue abyss. Marcus notices his strange gaze and, once on the bridge, approaches him to talk. He declares that he has figured him out. Justin can't know for sure that the defendant is innocent. Therefore, they must find the former drug dealer guilty. Back in the courtroom, the jury finally delivers their verdict, but Justin is absent from his seat. The judge reads the verdict. James Sight is found guilty of murder. The session concludes. Meanwhile, Justin is at the hospital with his wife, who has just given birth. Once home, watching their sleeping baby, he hears police sirens and gets nervous, fearing they are coming for him, but he's in the clear. Later, the new father goes to the courthouse for the sentencing of James. Before he leaves, Ellie offers him a piece of advice. She tells him that a former gang member doesn't deserve for a good person to ruin their life for them. James is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Prosecutor Faith receives flowers and thanks from the victim's parents. They have different last names. Noticing Justin in the courtroom, she starts connecting the dots and Googles the husband of the owner of the green Toyota. After seeing a photo, she finally pieces together the puzzle, realizing what should have been done earlier in the investigation. Outside, the prosecutor sits next to Justin on a bench. They talk, using subtle hints, suggesting that they both know the true facts of the case. Justin says that a single unfortunate accident can ruin the life of a good person and their family, who depend on him. It can also destroy the career of a prosecutor who wrongfully sends an innocent person to prison if the truth eventually comes out. But if you remember that the convicted person was a criminal all along, then everything becomes more straightforward and less complicated. After their conversation, a thoughtful Faith heads to the district attorney's office, where Eric congratulates her on her appointment. Justin visits Kendall's grave to lay flowers, then returns home to spend time with his daughter. It seems like everything is behind him, but suddenly there's a knock at the door. Outside stands the prosecutor. Faith looks at Justin. Justin looks at Faith. A whirlwind of emotions and unanswered questions. What do you think of this movie? Write in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and like. See you soon.